Hey there YouTube, thanks a lot for joining me for this week's episode of Mortal Realms Monday, where as you can see I am painting the Prosecutor that came with issue 25 of the Mortal Realms magazine. So to start off, I've gone ahead and primed this model with just a generic grey primer, and you can see that I've gone for the slightly alternate pose where he has his arm sort of twisted backwards as though he's swinging that hammer in. And you'll also notice that I've left the wings off, and this is so that I can paint them separate without getting any paint on the back of this model where I won't want it, so I can get to those easy to reach areas. So first of all, I'm just applying a thin coat of Balthazar Gold here. This is just slightly thinned down, not too much. I am using a wet palette. You can ignore the other colours at the top of the palette there. That's just from another model which will be uploaded later on this week, but for now I'm just using the bottom half of the palette for those that you want to follow along with the palette. So just going to coat the entire model with this Balthazar Gold, with exception to obviously the certain areas that I don't want the gold to be. So that's the top part of the pauldrons on his shoulders, the hammers that he has in each hand, and obviously any of the long tapestry stuff that he has flowing from him there, but everything else will be in the Balthazar Gold. So I will join you guys back in just a tick. Okay, so you'll notice that I went ahead and painted the Balthazar Gold on the gold areas of these wings. With hindsight to what the technique I decided to use later on in the process, that's something that I would actually do almost last on this model. You will see that later on in the video. Apologies for the head getting in the camera frame a few times throughout this video. I honestly didn't realise the camera was that far back, or that I was leaning that far forward, so apologies for that. But anyway, just taking some ceramite white here, which is a nice pure white, and I'm just basically applying a couple of thin coats over all of the wings, and I think that was it, just the wings for the ceramite white. Obviously making sure that none of that grey is left showing through. So I'll go ahead and get on with that, and we'll be back in just a tick. Okay, so with the white done, I'm now taking some Cantor blue and just thinning this down slightly, and I'm going to apply this to all of the blue areas on the armour. So that's just the two shoulder pauldrons up on the top there, as well as his right knee pad. So that's the left knee pad as you're looking at it. I'm not sure if it had to be blue, but I thought just to break up the legs a little bit more and get a little bit more colour into this model, as it is a lot of gold there, I decided to do the knee pad with the lightning bolt on it blue. And then also the leather straps that he has just on the front of him as well will also be done in the Cantor blue. So I'll get on with that, and we'll be back in just a minute. Right, so with the blue done, I'm now taking some Abaddon black and just applying this to the bottoms of his feet, just so that he didn't have the metal bottoms. I wanted a little bit more of a soul looking thing. So the bottom of his feet there, the back of his right knee, his belt in between his shoulder joints, elbow joints, and his thigh joint there on the left of the back of the leg, as well as the scabbard for the sword, leaving the lightning bolt and the parts at the top and the bottom of it still grey, which would be painted in gold. I did leave that out, but it's something that you could do at this stage if you wished. So once I've done that, we'll come back and get on with the next step. Okay, so once the black is done, I'm just taking some lead belcher here and applying this over the heads of the two hammers. There's not much else to do with the lead belcher here. I didn't want too much silver all over the model, so just going in with the traditional look of the heads of the hammer and the little part that joins it onto the handle just below the heads there. So I'll go in and get on with that. And if you guys are following along, then you can go ahead and do that as well, and we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so with the lead belcher done, it's now time to get some red into the model. And for this, I'm just using a small amount of corn red. That's corn red. And I am just applying this to the handles of the hammers, also the handle or hilt for his dagger that he's got on his waist, and also the plumage or hair on the top of his headpiece that is attached to the wings. You'll probably notice that I've also moved a lot of my paints from Citadel pots into some dropper bottles. Once I do some more, I didn't record the process of those ones, but I am getting some new ones soon. I will be transferring those as well, so I'll make a video of those and see if I can start doing some simple tutorial videos for you guys. If that's something you would definitely like to see, let me know down in the comments below, and I'll try and sort some tutorial type videos out for you guys. Some simple beginner friendly stuff. But I'll get on with this corn red and we'll be back in just a bit. Right, and I'm now taking some Morghast Bone. This is a new paint to my range from Citadel, obviously. So I thought I'd give it a go with this rather than going for the Zandri dust that I usually do. And I'm just applying this over all of the tapestry here, as well as the little piece that's on his right arm and the piece in the centre of his wings, just dangling from his back. So again, just a couple of thin down coats covering all of this, getting it on nice and even. And welcome back. So now that we've got all of the base colours applied to the model, it's now to start adding the shades. So the first shade that I'm using here is Reichland Flesh Shade Gloss, and I'm just applying this over all of the Balthazar Gold armour areas and letting it sit a little bit more obviously in the recesses, and then focusing it a little bit more into the dropped corners of the shoulder pauldrons here. You can see that I'm pulling down into those and then trying to get it to just pull a little bit at the bottom there, just to put a little bit of shadow in there. So obviously over his helmet, his armour, his legs, everything else. Like I said earlier, I have done the gold on the wings, but if you are following along, leave that for now and do those parts in exactly the same way as we're doing the gold here, but make it the last thing that you do with this model if you are following the technique for the wings that I will be applying here. So I'll just go ahead and get on with this shade, and then we'll take a look at the shading the rest of the model. Okay, so the next shade that I'm using here for the tapestry is Seraphim Sepia. I think it has a nice warm brown tone to it, not quite as dirty looking as the Agrax Earth shade, so I think that this works perfect for sort of fresh bone colour, or especially sort of bleached or bone type tapestry, or bone coloured tapestry like this. So obviously applying this over any of the areas that we did with the Morecast bone, and then we can move on to the next step. Right, so the next shade is Drakenhof Nightshade, and as you can see, this is just applied to all of the blue areas, concentrating it down where the pauldron or the blue meets the gold, and then obviously all over the white area on this pauldron, just making sure that it gets in between those recesses. Obviously the white on that will be touched up toward the end. Obviously this will also be applied to his knee pad and the leather straps that he has, and I will also be using this on the wings, but we'll see that a little bit later on. And the final shade used here is just some non-oil applied over the heads of the hammers and the handles themselves, and obviously this is just to sort of take down some of the clean shine of the hammer heads there, and to bring out the detail of the wrapped hand grips. So I'll just get on with this and I'll catch you guys back in just a bit. Okay, so now that the various shades have all had time to dry, I'm now taking some Retributor armor and using this as a highlight for the majority of the armor. So basically the Wycliffe Flesh shade will be in the recesses and given us our darkest value, followed by the Balthazar Gold, just a small section of that, and then that will blend up into the Retributor armor here. So the Retributor armor is a little bit more than a highlight. It's sort of a bit, I would use it between a mid-tone and a highlight, with the Balthazar Gold being between the shade and the mid-tone, as we do want the armour to be a little bit shinier than the Balthazar Gold allows. So really just making sure that this is applied to anywhere that the light will catch the most, so any flat surfaces that are sort of facing the top of the model, as well as some of the on the legs here. You can see that I'm just doing the outside edges and the bulge of the calf muscle on the inside, and then obviously the tops of the arms, top of the head, things like that. The pauldrons, it will be the uppermost curved part, stopping before it about halfway down the slope as it slopes into those corners. But yeah, so that's about the Retributor armor going on here, and we'll be back in just a bit. Okay, so now I'm just going around the model and using some Stormhost silver, just very carefully edge highlighting the silver and the gold areas. With the silver, that's obviously any of the flat edges that you can see here, giving a little bit of a wider surface than I will do with the gold. And then with the gold areas, I just pick out any very sort of the highest peaks of and the sharpest corners of edges. So in terms of the shoulder pauldron, for example, that will just be the very center peak of the curve. Then a little bit the same with the curve around his gauntlets on his wrists. That's just the very peak there. And then the same with the knee pads, some of the chest armor, just anywhere where it will come to an apex before it starts curving back down the other side. And then just a small amount of this silver, very thin line, just to give the impression of that bright white light that gold tends to give off when it reflects, you know, the harshest point of light. So I'll get on with that and we'll be back in just a bit. Okay, so now that we've had the Seraphim Sapia get into the gaps and lettering on the banners and scroll that's coming off of him here, I'm now going to go back with the Morcast bone and thinning it down slightly, just go around the letters and over some of those flat areas where the light would catch, leaving the undercurve a little bit as though it's in shadow. So I'll just go around and do all of this, and we'll be back in just a bit. Okay, so now that those banners lightened up a little bit, I'm just taking some wraith bone here and just edge highlighting all down the edges of the scrolls here, and then I'll go back in with a size 0 and just very carefully line around the edge of some of the letters that are almost parallel to the ground, so as they slope down and under, they won't have the highlighting around them, just where the light would catch on the top surface of them all. So you can see here it went a little bit too thick, just dabbed it off and then just going back on it. Basically this will cover probably about a quarter of the surface area of the banner here, so just anywhere the light would catch, obviously down the outside edges, along the top of the fold here as it tucks into the back of his belt, and then like I said, just sort of highlighting some of those letters on that flatter surface as it levels out a little bit. But I'll get on with that and we'll be back in just a bit. Right, so next up I'm just taking some Teclis blue and I'm just edge highlighting all of the blue areas. So that'll be the leather straps here as just an edge highlight, as well as a little bit around the top of the kneecap just before it reaches the gold, so leaving a little bit of that blue under there, and then just edge highlighting around the top of the cap there, and then doing the same thing with the pauldrons, just going around that edge just slightly away from the gold area, so leaving a little bit of that darker blue, and then a very thin line of the Teclis blue, and then again the same on the curve at the top of the pauldron where there's no gold against that edge. So I'll just get on with this and we'll be back in just a bit. Okay, so I do apologise for this, guys. I thought I was more in shot for this, and I thought I had recorded more for these wings. I do think we get a few more of these models in some later issues, so I will be sure to go into details and show a close-up of how I do this. But basically what I'm doing is I'm taking the Citadel base brush here, just because it's an angled brush. I prefer it, and what I'm doing, just going between my blues, so the Cantor blue and the Teclis blue and some Corax Corax white. What I'm doing is stippling in the dark blue right around the top of these wings where it meets the gold. I'm then going from the the Cantor blue and dipping into the Teclis blue, and this is without rinsing the brush between. I will then stipple that, blending the two together. I will then do the same but going into the white and stipple that down, and basically I will repeat over and over those steps to get a smooth blend with the stippling. I will then take some white scar, and using it slightly thinned down, I will just dry brush the very bottom of the wings and then bring it slightly up into that the lightest blue at the top there, just to pick off some of those edges of the wing blades is the best way that I could call them, as they go up into the blue. I will then take some Drakenhof Nightshade and wash that down from just in the darkest blue area, just to darken it up slightly. So obviously you can see here I'm using the white scar now to get this dry brush white on the tips of the wings, and you can see the effect that I've gone from the dark blue fading down into that white as we work down the wings. So again, I do apologise for not having the having it on screen. I will make sure that next time that I will do a focus point just on the technique of doing these wings, rather than going through the whole video of painting another one of these guys. We'll just look at the wings specifically, and you can take a look at that one there. So with that done, we'll move on to the next step and just get some of those reds highlighted, and then we will be done. Right, and finally over the handles here, I'm just thinly or lightly applying some Wazdaka red. So that's the Wazdaka red layer paint from Games Workshop, and all I'm doing is just using the side of the brush, as you can see, and just gently touching along those handles, just so the paint picks up on the very top edges and texture of that surface. You'll also note here that I have gone in and cleaned up the white on the shield there, on the pauldron, and I've also gone ahead and done the gold, or touched up the gold, as I had previously done it on the wings there. But as I said, if you can, leave the wings until last. Do that blue, as obviously the stippling will go over the gold that you've already done, which is obviously my mistake. So all I'm doing finally here is just mixing some of that Wazdaka red in with some of the ceramite white, and just to get a slightly pinker colour, and just using that as a final edge highlight. Right, and there we have it guys, the finished model. You can see with that blue gradient effect, I didn't get it too smooth on the back of the wings. I'm a little bit disappointed with that, but the inside you can see that that was a lot smoother a transition on the back there. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to, or please hit that like button. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscription button and ding that little bell for notifications of future videos. Obviously this is part of the Mortal Realms Monday series, which is every Monday. And I also do the Indomitus painting series, where every week I show a new model from the Indomitus set, painted up for one of my two armies, so either the Dark Angels or my own Necron army that does not yet have a dynasty name. But yeah, there we go guys. So until next time, take it easy and keep painting those minis.